Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. We're into the sort of post-World Cup pre-season period of the summer. And that's when everything starts to get a bit mad. Because there isn't the distraction of the World Cup, and now all the focus is on transfers and what we do and what we don't do and what we've done and what we haven't done and what we should do and what we definitely shouldn't do. And people start to go a bit, mad, which is normal. They don't call it silly season for nothing, But of course, the idea that people going mad is normal is a bit mad in itself. How can madness be normal? But I think you know what I mean when I say this. And if you're a regular reader of Arseblog, if you're a regular listener to the Arsecast, you've been around the block before. You've been there, done that, and worn the t-shirt. So I don't think you need me to tell you what to do or how to cope or anything else. But of course, we're all invested. We're all interested. We're all curious. We're all hoping that the club will do good business. We've missed out on Morgan Rogers, but maybe there's something going on with Bruno Guimaraes. We don't quite know what's happening there. Newcastle being a bit intransigent, I think, in terms of the fee. So will we pursue that or will we look elsewhere? What are we going to do about the William Saliba situation? The club announcing that he's going to have an extended period out of the team to recuperate from a back injury. What are we going to do there? Who is going to be the guy that we go for in place of Morgan Rogers? How are we going to bolster the attack? We know that Christos Solis is about to be announced as a new signing. There's one element of the attacking improvement, but what else might happen? All those questions will be answered between now and, I think, the end of August, whenever it is the transfer window closes. I haven't looked at the exact date yet, but that date I'm sure will become fixed in our minds before too long. Anyway, we don't have the answers to any of those questions, so rather than do questions today, we're going to do statements. And that is a format of the podcast where I ask our Patreon members for some statements, which the guest has to either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with. It makes for some nice talking points. And with me today to do that, delighted to welcome back the co-host of the Stadio podcast. It's Ryan Hunn. Good morning, Ryan.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How has your summer been?
Quite busy, actually, thanks. Yeah, was doing Stadio stuff for the World Cup. And was also helping the Tifo guys out with some stuff for their World Cup things as well. So quite busy.
Yeah.
But, almost done.
Okay.
Almost done. Get a little bit of a break soon. But yeah, it's been good. I thought the World Cup was, I think, quite positive in my experience in terms of like what I thought it was going to be like. I think it was good to see the negative side of it really discussed and at the front and center of everyone's minds, while also in, counterbalancing that with some really amazing football stuff. So I think the right team won in the end.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think it was, while it was happening and in hindsight, and, I think it was a fascinating World Cup for all kinds of reasons, good and bad.
Yeah, I agree.
And I suppose if your job or if your work life revolves around talking about football, then that's no bad thing,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have to admit, my ability to check into other football podcasts kind of just completely fell through the tournament. So I haven't managed. I've got a big backlog of Arsecast to get through.
Okay.
But I don't know if you managed to chat about much of it, but I think that Musa and I said on Stadio that it kind of felt like weirdly hopeful coming out of it, because it felt like a bit of a tipping point in the pushback, the general kind of more kind of widespread pushback on things like FIFA and things like Infantino. And I think, weirdly, whilst a lot of it was so gross and like some of the grossest stuff we've ever seen at a World Cup, kind of a weirdly positive going forward.
Yeah, I think, they've crossed the Rubicon a little bit, in terms of like how far can we push this? Too far is the answer. And I do agree with you. Like, I think one of the best things about the World Cup for me was the sort of natural, organic booing of the hydration breaks / ad breaks, the ad breaks.
Yeah.
I really thought that was positive, because it wasn't just people sitting sniping on social media or talking about it on blogs and podcasts. It was the actual fans in the ground.
Yeah.
And those were fans of, whichever countries were playing, but there would have been a lot of local American fans of football who were there by virtue of, location, who got tickets to the games wherever they were happening. And I think that was, for me, a really, really positive thing as well. So, I think it's one that will be talked about.
For sure.
Yeah. But anyway, it's behind us now. And
Arsenal.
And we're here to talk a little, not necessarily we'll talk about Arsenal, but we'll talk about it through the medium of statements, which, I'm sure you remember, the drill. You got to strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with these particular statements. And I suppose a place to start this morning is William Saliba. And Arsenal, quite unusually, released a statement about him yesterday about the back injury that he suffered. They confirmed he doesn't need surgery, but he is going to be missing for an extended period. A club that usually plays its cards very close to its chest when it comes to injury news. But I guess when he sits down in the middle of a pitch in a World Cup semi-final and people are saying, he said, my back is gone, there's no trade secrets happening here. It was really about confirmation of how long he might be out or what kind of treatment he might require, surgery or otherwise. So no surgery. Hopefully that's the right thing for him, and hopefully the extended period isn't too extended. But French says this. I feel like they may have a vested interest in this one. French says, how we replace Saliba in the interim is more important than how we supplement our attack to retain the title.
I'm going to say disagree, because I think that we've seen some really, really good defensive problem solving from Mikel Arteta last season. I think there were, it wasn't exactly the most stable back four all year.
Mm.
And I think that whoever comes in there now or whoever shifts around, you've got someone like Mosquera, who is a very, 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 very good centre back for his age. And I think one of the real positive things about last season, despite, in a title winning season, seeing someone like him come in at that age and be so assured and kind of just drama free for a young centre, primarily a centre back who can also play right back. I think that so the Premier League learns very fast, and other teams learn very quick and evolve very quick to problem solve against other teams, especially teams who are coming off the back of a title win. I think that's going to be a major evolution of this team this season. I think it should be the priority of the evolution, because I think that is going to be the thing that oppositions will have an easier time coping with than. I think it's going to be harder for oppositions to figure out how to break down an Arsenal back four, whatever that back four is, and whether that means Mosquera going in. I think Arsenal do need an option, but I don't think that they should be going out to try and get someone of the equipment. I don't think a huge amount of the transfer budget should go on a big defensive signing. Yeah. That's my point. I think it should be focused more on the attacking side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is an interesting question, because how we replace doesn't necessarily mean that we go into the market, right? We could do it a number of ways. There are some names linked. I'll ask you about those in a moment. But, you've also got, as you say, Christian Mosquera, Ben White and Jurrien Timber. I know they both have question marks over their fitness. They've got difficult injury histories over the last couple of years, but both of them can play centre half as well, and Jurrien Timber has been used there by Mikel Arteta in the past. So, it's possible you could have those three as your options for centre half and think, can we get a young right back maybe? And then you have that succession plan, and maybe Ben White moves on next summer, and you can do it that way. I am a little concerned though, because I just think for me, Saliba is as important to this team as anybody. He's as important as Declan Rice, as important as Gabriel, as important as David Raya. So I do have some concerns that we need to get this right, however we go about it.
But yeah, I think, sorry to cut in, but I think that if this was 2 seasons ago, I'd be more panicky. I think last season, it just felt like we coped very well with the defensive side of it, whoever was missing. You know, a lot of really, really good defenders missed quite a bit of time at various points. And I think Saliba is the one that we probably will miss the most out of anyone. If you wanted to, if the last person you would want to take out of the back four is him. But I think that because as long as we've got the other two of the other three are, the other three are hopefully first choice. Or even if they're not, I think that's the thing now. I just feel so confident in that back four, no matter what configuration it is, that I feel like whatever the solution is will be fine. It wouldn't be something that could survive the whole season, but I think if it could survive the first 3 months, then we'll be all right. And I think that I just have a bit of a gut feeling. Maybe it'll come up in another statement, but I do have a gut feeling that where this team is going to evolve this season is going to be in the front third, and hopefully games won't be quite as tight as they were last season, and maybe we'll have a little bit more margin to play with, so we won't need to be quite as defensively reliant on the centre-back pairing. That's
sort of my big hope. I think, regardless of losing Saliba, I think the improvement has to come further forward. And like you say, score more goals, be more creative, make more chances, and make games less of a knife edge, or play games not on the knife edge as much. A couple of names have been linked as possible solutions to the Saliba absence. John Stones, free transfer, 32 years of age. And Ezri Konsa from Aston Villa, a player who, isn't going to get the juices flowing, it's fair to say. Decent player. I think the fact Villa are looking for a lot of money gives Arsenal pause for thought, because essentially when Saliba is back, this player becomes like second choice, third choice, a backup option, right? So how much can you actually spend on that player? It's quite a difficult one, because I think if you look at John Stones and his injury record, I had a look over the last 2 seasons, he's missed more than 50 games cumulatively for Manchester City because of injury issues. Konsa is younger, more available, can play right back, can play centre half, but uninspiring. But I mean, I don't know what you can reasonably expect from a backup option, which is, what he would be. The question then becomes, do you spend that kind of money on a backup player if Villa are going to hold out for a big fee? It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my preference would actually be to go for Stones, because I think that while his injury record hasn't been amazing, you won't need him for quite as much football over the next however long, hopefully. But I also just think having someone who so clearly has like a squad role, I think is quite important as well. And I think from a from an actual footballing point of view, he can recreate Saliba's like passing ability, for example. I think he's a really good. He's obviously an amazing ball playing centre back. So I get the feeling that if Arsenal are going to get like a big-ish priority signing, I can't imagine them trying to take some. I think the Rodgers thing was the one, right? So the Rodgers, in terms of a Premier League signing, I think Rodgers seemed to be the focus. I can't imagine them going and paying, if they're going to get Guimaraes as well, potentially, or whoever, I can't imagine them going and paying that same premium for another Premier League centre-back who is not going to be first choice very, very soon. I imagine they'll probably pick someone up, maybe from somewhere else in Europe, and potentially add Stones as well. With the Ben White thing you mentioned before, like weirdly, I kind of never really thought, because of the injury, I kind of accepted that Ben White probably wouldn't move this year anyway, because I think it can be quite hard to sell someone who's either recovering from an injury that serious. So I think it's going to be good to have him around, and I imagine what will probably end up happening is that no one gets signed, and Mosquera starts at centre back, and I don't know, Declan Rice is absolutely knackered and starts at right back. And everyone's like, no, already?
Declan Rice at right back, first game of the season.
Can you imagine?
I can imagine.
There's part of me that kind of wants to see it just as almost like a social experiment to see what the response is.
Yeah. I mean,
but I'd rather not. I'd rather next season be quite chill.
I don't think that will happen, to be honest.
I don't
but
either.
There's just sort of that crushing inevitability of Declan Rice ending up there at some point during the season.
It's like the GTA meme. It's like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah. I do think we will sign someone. I think it will, whether it's Konsa or Stones or they have a different option, because I have to think that Arsenal, having seen Saliba's back injury and they nursed him through the end of the season, and I'm sure he had painkillers to get him into the Champions League final and painkillers all the way through the World Cup until such point as he couldn't take it anymore. Arsenal must have had that in the back of their mind, that there was the potential for him to break down. Therefore, what do we need to do to have something in place, if we need a replacement player? So whether it is a right back and you use the other guys at centre half, or whether you bring in someone like Stones, if you're confident that Saliba is going to be 3 or 4 months, it probably does make more sense to bring in Stones than to spend, a big chunk of money on Ezri Konsa. But that is an issue for Mikel Arteta, Andrea Berta, etc. to deal with. Okay, let's move on. There's a couple here. I think they go kind of hand in hand, so maybe do them one after the other. Ruben Siegman says, it is good that Arsenal are being relatively disciplined in the market by sticking to their valuations. And Michael White says, 80 million is the new 40 million. The market has permanently shifted and clubs and fans need to get used to it. So whichever one you want to start with, fire ahead.
Sorry, remind me of how the first one's worded again. Arsenal are...
It is good that Arsenal are being relatively disciplined in the market by sticking to their valuations.
So I would say strongly agree with that, because I think that everyone is so obsessed with transfers. And I know that there are players that Arsenal need to replace. But this is a side who won the league and got to the Champions League final. So in terms of the amount of surgery that needs to be done on this squad, metaphorically, probably not literally, there's probably quite a lot of actual surgery that needs to be done on the squad. But it's not actually a huge amount. I know that we obviously could see some clear areas that we were like, oh my God, if only we had X, Y, Z, or if only we could play in this way further forward. But there are obviously like signings that need to be made. But it doesn't need like an overhaul or anything. So I think that being a little bit disciplined means that you may miss out on someone like Morgan Rogers, for example. But I think that there was always... I remember having conversations with people, and I think it was quite clear to see how that was going to play out, because there was also a sell-on involved, which means that Villa wanted a ton more money than they probably should have got for Rogers. And if someone pays it, they pay it. And there is the Xabi Alonso factor there as well. I wouldn't underestimate that. So I think Arsenal were quite sensible to maybe be like, look, we're not going to go over if it's 80 or 85. And I think that's fair. So I'd say I'd strongly agree with that.
Okay. Can I just sort of play devil's advocate for a minute?
Of course,
then?
Yeah.
One of the things that people have said is that when you are the team that's won the title, and I agree with your point about how major surgery is not required, but, augmentation of key areas, I think is important. One of the points people make is that there are a limited number of players who can actually improve your team because you're at this level. Like, it's not like when we finished 8th. It's quite, I'm not going to say easy, but it is easier to identify players who can take you from 8th to 5th to 2nd, whatever, than it is to maintain your position at the top of the table. So the pool of players is limited. Therefore, if the market shifts, and I think people, would also accept that the market has shifted or has been skewed by financially irresponsible organizations or clubs like City and Chelsea who don't seem to give a shit how much they spend. And that has a material impact on the market, that your chances of getting those players who can improve you are diminished if you are not willing to bend to what the market dictates a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, but I think what you sometimes see happening with clubs then is they pay maybe 10 to 15 million per player over the top, right? Yeah. And then that impacts their budget later down the line on a marquee player, for example. So I would rather see 90 million go for someone like Bradley Barcola, as opposed to then Arsenal haggling a little bit over Barcola because they've overspent previously in 2 or 3 signings before that on players that they probably don't shift the needle enough to then go after someone who really shifts the needle. So I think that's where it's almost that what's the like keeping your powder dry, it seems to come up a lot in transfer talk. I think it's like, I'm quite glad that, for example, we've not already seen Arsenal pay 120 million for Morgan Rogers, which would have been super exciting, but if there was another thing down the line that Arsenal really needed to pay for, like, I think Morgan Rogers is amazing. I'm not entirely... I think it creates a lot of difficulties in trying to get the best out of him and figure out where you put him in that side. And it's just almost a bit like, it would have been great in theory. I think in reality, it's just probably not the most amazing fit, you know?
No, I agree. I think we've got... You know, if you're talking about a player who can play on the left, but who's better in central areas... Yeah, we've got him. We've got one. Yeah, and I'm perfectly fine with that player because he's amazing and I love him. Yeah. I also excuse me. I also think that, for example, the Bruno Guimaraes thing was interesting because it's like there's just a premium being paid for those kind of players who I think that if you have looked at some of, but what I'm saying is I'm more interested in seeing Arsenal pivot ever so slightly to being a little bit more mindful of the players that they might pick up 2 or 3 seasons later via a Premier League club. Because I think that the squad is good enough now to carry 1 or 2 of those players a season and integrate them. Whereas in the past, Arsenal couldn't do that because Arsenal needed to get in the Champions League. So they needed instant impact, instant improvement. And also, Arsenal have got some really good youngsters coming through. I think you're going to see Max Dowman play a lot more minutes this season. And that is like a signing, you know? And I think you're going to see Miles play more minutes in midfield this season, which is basically like a signing because he's a really, really good player. Think how late do you remember he came in a few weeks after we had that last chat about him playing in midfield, and then he started in the Champions League final in central midfield. You can't muck around and be rubbish and play centre midfield in a Champions League final. So we've essentially got another really, really good central midfield option this season that we didn't have last season for the whole season. So I'm all right personally with them picking and choosing the moments where they want to overpay and where they want to be a bit like, we'll hold off here. I think it does depend on what you've got available to you. Like if you're Arsenal, you're looking at Morgan Rogers and you've got a valuation, whether the market has shifted or not, and you're looking at your squad and you've got Mikel Merino and you've got Miles Lewis-Skelly and you've got Eberechi Eze and you've got midfield with Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi and Martin Odegaard, potentially Ethan Nwaneri as well. You're not sort of desperate for Morgan Rogers. You might really like Morgan Rogers and want Morgan Rogers, but you're not desperate for him. Like, not getting him doesn't leave you in a big hole. Whereas, for example, this time last year, when we needed a striker, we had to get a striker. We were very, very short, or we were short in that area of the pitch. So, yeah.
So the second one, what was the second one? The fourth, 80 million is the new 40 million.
Yeah. So you got to get used to it.
Yeah. I don't think it is. I think in some instances it is. So what would I say then? Like, just agree? I think it can be. I think it's the new Premier League 40 million.
That was the point I was going to make to you. Like,
I don't think it's anywhere else is 40 million.
No. I think,
but the Premier League is the same.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that from a Premier League point of view. But I also think that while it will have a knock-on effect on other European markets and what everything is sort of price indexed to some extent, right? Isn't it? It was like when Neymar went for 200 million, everyone fucking went, what the fuck? And everything kind of went crazy because of that. So it's not a case that the Premier League, even though it is kind of a bubble, things still have an impact elsewhere. But I do think if 40 million is the new 80 or 80 million is the new 40 million in the Premier League, you can find the 40 million with smart scouting and greater knowledge of other markets. So
yeah, that's it. Because I think that you've seen how good some players have been at, like coming in for like a little bit under the radar, and then they come in at a Premier League team, they have a year, and then everyone in the top four is trying to buy them for however much. Now, I know the counter argument to that is that they're getting minutes because they are able to, because they may be coming in at a Bournemouth or a Brighton. But I still think I think good squad management is going to be a big priority this season for Arsenal. And I think my gut feeling is that I think Mikel Arteta will rotate a bit more this season now that the league he's got that over the line. I think there's a big psychological hurdle to overcome. So I think if Arsenal are going to pick up one or two players who might have gone to Brighton or Bournemouth first and then gone somewhere else for 100 million, I think now's the time to do it. Because, I think there's also just I think having a player who might be a little bit of a, not rogue like football-wise, but someone who maybe is wanting to be a bit of in German, like the German word is like a bit of a joker kind of thing, that kind of less system-based and a bit more like, young with a point to prove. Now's we saw the impact that Max Dowman had when he came in, just completely fearless, doing things that a 25, 26-year-old who was bought probably wouldn't do. If you can recreate that in like one or two other areas in an attacking sense, I think that's well worth it than as opposed to paying like 80 million for someone from a Premier League club.
Shatner's bassoon says, speaking of rotating and things, we should rotate heavily in the majority of our Champions League group phase games.
I would disagree with that because of the use of the term heavily, because I think part of the reason that Arsenal had such a good Champions League campaign last season was because the group phase or the league phase, they were top of the league. And I think that's a real priority now, to get one of those top two spots. Should be a priority because I think it helps you. Like having every second leg at home was a big thing for Arsenal last season.
Yep.
And that should be a priority. So I think what we've seen, it's really interesting. I was having this conversation with someone the other day about Ancelotti. I think James Horncastle raised a point about Ancelotti a couple of years ago when he was saying that the first league phase came through. It was really confusing him because he'd mastered the pattern of how to play a Champions League group stage, and then you shifted it. So managers were figuring out, do we rotate early? Do we rotate late? What's the pathway through here? And I think what we saw is a correction last season where everyone actually kind of went for it in the group phase because they realised securing top spot or getting qualification as quick as possible is the way to do it. Whereas the season before, I think you saw a lot of people rotating, and then all of a sudden, Man City had to play that
extra game, two games,
and it's just not what you need. So I think you will see an element of rotation anyway based on the opposition, because the range of opposition is quite broad now in the Champions League. I don't think you'll see heavy rotation like a Carabao Cup, early stages of the Carabao Cup, for example. I think what I would like to see more next season is just a little bit more rotation in general, as opposed to being like, okay, we have made 11 changes here. Because I don't think that really works as much as you would want it to from a fluidity point of view. So I would rather see, okay, Arsenal have got what should be in theory quite a comfortable home game in the league this weekend. It's a Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff. We're going to put 3 or 4 changes in, but they're going to be on the bench, and if things aren't going well, we can bring them on and maybe salvage a game. That's what I want to see a bit more. Or, like we were talking before, like getting bigger margins in games where you can then take players off earlier, because the knock-on effect through the season is huge. So that's what I would rather, as opposed to big Champions League rotation. Sure. I don't think we'll see that, because I think Arsenal have seen the benefit of getting through. Yep,
I agree with you completely there. Let me have a look at this one. Where was it? There's a lot about transfers.
Yeah,
it's the season. It is the season. It is silly season. So there's not a lot going on apart from transfers. There's a few that we might get to, though. Vivek Arulnathan, I don't know how to pronounce that. Apologies if I got that one wrong. Says, the Ox will still remain Arsenal's record transfer sale at the end of this window. So we're going at transfers, but a slightly different way. Players going out.
I mean, who is there that they can sell?
I mean, listen, there are, players, let's say, that are, I don't want to say surplus to requirements, but you're looking at Fabio Vieira, you're probably looking at Gabriel Jesus. The one I think that might make me disagree with this one is the Ethan Nwaneri situation, where I think that is a potential outgoing, which, I will say again, every time this crops up, I don't want to see Arsenal sell Ethan Nwaneri this summer.
I strongly agree with that.
Yeah, even if I find it difficult to see him playing a lot the season ahead, my preference would be get him a good loan to a Premier League club, let him play, let him develop. He's still only 18, 19 years of age. We don't have to make the definitive decision on him right now, but the financial aspect of this is another consideration. Whether people like it or not, that might be something that plays into this. So that's the only one that would make me feel like I could disagree with this one, because I think if you are selling Ethan Nwaneri, you want to sell him for considerably more than what we sold Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain for, which was what? 10 years ago? 10 years ago? Was it? Summer of 2015?
2017-18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so was that 2017 the summer?
Oh, yes, because he played
He played early on in that. Didn't he play right wing back and then they sold him?
He played against Liverpool, but didn't he play in the FA Cup final? Yeah, we got spanked by Liverpool, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was
in the
horrible.
kind of that was the Puma years, man. Why are we talking about this? We just won the league. What are we doing?
Well, we're just teasing out conversation for the benefit of the listeners to give them something to.
You and I just looking up into
the
the distance, thinking about some of those Puma.
Yeah,
games. We don't have to do that anymore, Andrew. It was fine.
Oh well, at least Puma gave us a nice yellow and blue.
They did.
Come on,
that would be
Adidas.
there is a lighter yellow and blue one coming back this season, right?
Right.
Or is it more of a goldy, like the gold kit? I can't remember.
Yeah,
that blue one's nice. Anyway, what are we talking about? All right, okay,
everything looks good on Righty when he's modelling.
I know, right? Do you know what? The Fabio Vieira one's really interesting because he had an amazing season last season at highest foul, and then when they found out how much it would have been to sign him, they were like, nope. Which is it shows you the knock on of the Premier League, right? It's really difficult to offload players to clubs around Europe unless you take a big, or what is perceived as a big hit on the fee. Mm-hmm. For example, I still can't believe Jakub Kiwior went for that much money, but it makes sense if you look at what other teams around Europe are actually spending on transfers, right? Jakub Kiwior, what did he go for? 20 million euros, was it in the end?
Something like that, yeah.
Which feels very, very cheap considering he played very, very well in 2 legs in the Champions League semi-final not too long ago. Mm-hmm. But that's just the reality of it. So, I think I'm stalling for time before giving a definitive answer here. I'm going to say... Do you know what? I'm going to say disagree.
Okay.
And I reckon it might be something... I think someone might pay money for Gabriel Jesus. Someone like that because of a name and experience. And...
Do they also have a head injury?
No, but if you think what's 38 million euros now in pounds, that's 32 million pounds. I could see someone paying 32 million pounds for Gabriel Jesus.
Dude, I fucking want whatever's in your coffee this morning. I want some.
No, think about it. Because
no way, man.
Do you not think?
No,
I
just don't think. I mean, listen, I don't think it's impossible to get some money.
Look how much Sunderland spent last season coming up, right?
Sure.
Can you not see someone just being like, yeah, let's go and get Gabriel Jesus for 35 million quid.
Maybe. I mean, look, I could see somebody paying something for Gabriel Jesus. I just cannot envisage a world in which anyone pays 30 something million for him. I just can't.
Can I just clarify?
Like, I know
I wouldn't, but
nor would I. I know we live in the stupidest timeline.
We've just heard.
But,
so look, so if 80 million is the new 40 million in the Premier League, then 32 million is the new 16 million.
Right.
I'm just.
I tell you what, if we got 16 million for Gabriel Jesus, if we got 16 million for Gabriel Jesus, I'll have a street party and you're all invited.
No,
it would
you know
be
what?
good.
No, you're right. You're right. What am I talking about?
It's okay. It's okay. We all have moments, you know.
I'm just like because
snap back into reality.
It doesn't feel like that much money, really. Now,
I know,
but it is a huge amount of money. Do you know what I mean?
No,
So
I know. But it's a player who, you know, he's had so many injury issues, and basically, you know, you go back to that moment in 2022 when, you know, he got injured at the World Cup, or he was carrying that injury into the World Cup and then broke down there. And it's just been a sort of inexorable sort of decline in his ability and value, you know, as an asset, for want of a better phrase. I think the only way we break our transfer record this summer is if we sell Waneri or sell Miles Lewis-Skelly, which, you know, again, I hope we don't do. But
yeah, I don't think Miles is going. I don't think that all those kind of weird noises went away very quickly last season.
Yeah, so
I just think with the Gabriel Jesus thing, I think there were just enough like. Remember when like Daniel Levy he always wanted to get Jose Mourinho, right? And then by the time he got Jose Mourinho, it was a bit like, you know, you're not really getting the Mourinho that you thought you wanted to get.
Yeah.
I feel like there are enough sporting directors out there at certain clubs who might be like, guys, we signed Gabriel Jesus, you know, and it's like a statement, but I don't know, man.
Yeah. We had another one about Ethan, which from Devon Murthy, who says, we will pay 70 million to sign Ethan Waneri if he wasn't already an Arsenal player, which I agree with. If he was at Chelsea, we would definitely do that. Let me ask you this one, or put this one to you. Snooner Gunner, retaining the Premier League title is harder than winning it for the first time in a long time.
I'm going to say disagree. I think because there is so much there's so much scar tissue that builds up over years and years and years of near misses and failure and off the pitch noise and all of that kind of stuff. I think every time that happens again, it becomes harder and harder and harder until you finally get it over the line.
I mean, I'm with you. I would disagree with that one, because I think, you know, we've won it. As you say, the near misses become psychologically, what's the word? Like a huge burden, right? Every time you don't do it, it's like, oh, not again. And then when you come really close to not doing it and you don't do it, you get pipped at the post. That's hard. So I think the hardest thing is to almost, well, one, to build a team that can do it, that's good enough to do it. And the other aspect is to convince a group of players who finished second 3 years in a row that you can still do better. You can still take that next step. Because I, you know, whatever their motivations and ambitions, at the end of the day, they're just humans. They're just people who must have doubts, you know, those exist. You know, people who are hugely confident in their own ability, and I think we've seen that from Arsenal, the way the players have talked, that they still believed. I don't think we could have done what we did last season if they did not believe that we could win the title. But I think the human condition is such that, you know, you still need to sort of bolster that belief along the way. And now I think winning it next year, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I think we face big challenges because of player availability, some of the injuries, you know, the fact we haven't done a goddamn thing in this transfer market. That's just my little joke. But I do think we are well placed, you know, given some of the issues at other clubs and the changes at other clubs and the fact that we are established. I feel like it probably is easier to win it next year than it has been to win it over the last 4 or 5.
I agree. I think it's been so difficult for Arsenal to win the Premier League over the last however long, obviously. And I think that there's been... I can't quite remember a season like it or a side like it that had that much focus on it while weirdly not ever feeling like fully favourites. And yet when they didn't get it over the line, were so consistently criticised for using that horrible bottling word. You know what I mean? It was, I think, and I think the players like clocked that. You know, we've talked about this before, so I don't want to rehash it too much, but the players clocked that, and as much as elite as they are, you saw how aware they were of everything when the celebrations came out. So that's in there, and that's playing a role. And I think that there's just a real muscle memory at play, like when you've kind of been and done it, and you've done it in the way that they have last season. Like, it was such a grind. It was such a grind, and not a particularly fun season. But yeah, like I just think that the experience that a lot of those players would have taken from that, I think is, amazing. And hopefully it just frees them up a little bit more. I mean, we always talk about Moose and I always talk about the Rory McIlroy thing, right? You know, people question whether he was ever going to win another major. Sure. He wins Augusta, you know, he wins the Masters at Augusta, he completes the career Grand Slam, and then he goes back next year and wins it again. And it's the one he couldn't win for a decade or so. Now, different sports, definitely, but I do think that there is a real freedom to finally getting that big thing over the line, which is why I think we were taught, so many people were like, the league is the one. If you had to pick the league or the Champions League, the league was the one. And so I think I'm not saying that Arsenal will definitely win the league this season, because I think that the Premier League is so difficult, but I think that I'm more confident about Arsenal winning the league this season than I would have been. Well, you know, I was actually quite confident about winning it last season, but in terms of a couple of years ago, maybe. Now that they've done it.
Okay, Joe's wretched urges. You know, we won't ask Joe. Says,
is it buying Gabriel Jesus?
I think so. Yeah.
So I was looking at the transfer marks thing. It was in euros, and I just realised that Ox's thing was £35 million. So that £3.5 million makes all the difference.
It sure does.
They strongly disagree.
Yeah, Joe every day is like, I just want to go out and buy Gabriel Jesus for £32 million.
50 million is the new 12 million.
Yeah, exactly. If this was the old days, he'd have the self-flagellation, asking God to rid him of these wretched urges to sign Jesus. Anyway, his actual statement is, Noni Madueke will get 10 assists next season.
How many did he have the season just gone?
That is a tremendous question, which I will look up as you consider your answer.
I'm going to have a look on Transfermarkt.
Yeah, me too.
Let's have a look. Stats, current season.
4 in all competitions.
Oh.
That was a real that was you were in your head, you were going, you probably got like 8 or something. So
it's really funny because when it comes up, it had 8, and I was like 8, and then it was like, all-time Premier League assists. 4 in all comps.
One in the Premier League.
So the assists thing is, it's what was his? If we want to get into some nerd nonsense, what do we know his expected assists?
That is a great question.
Do you know what? We don't need to go that granular, but I will say all comps, 8 assists, all comps. There's not a neutral option, is there? You have to go either agree or disagree. I will say, that's tough. I think that's the real, I think probably 7 is the over-under, right? So I think it's right on the line. Because I think he will probably assist more than he did last season. But again, I think it all depends on whether Arsenal, if they make another attacking signing, is that going to come in a central striker position? Probably not. Is Kai Havertz going to be... Kai Havertz will probably be fitter, hopefully, to play this season and play more football. Man, these are tough. All right, I'm gonna say I'm gonna be glass half full and say agree.
You're gonna agree. Okay.
Don't do this to me again. I feel
No.
I'm
not judging.
I'm trying to have a nice time. Arsenal aren't playing, Andrew. I'm just. It's like I'm enjoying the relative quiet before the season starts. So I'm hoping. But I mean, think 8 assists. Are Arsenal going to score more goals this season than last season?
I hope so.
So he got 4 assists last season in his first season in a really, really difficult, grindy, horrible season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are our hopes for Noni Madueke this season in terms of like from a player point of view? Are we expecting him to play more? Because he played quite a lot of football.
Are we
expecting him to be more confident after being at the World Cup?
After winning the Premier League title, after spending a year at Arsenal? I mean, I'm gonna strongly disagree with the 10 assists.
I'm going to disagree then, because I don't think it.
But he did have an XA, expected assists, over the course of the season in the Premier League only of 2.8, and he got 1 in the Premier League. So he underperformed his XA, but I don't really know. So
other people should have finished those chances that he created.
that's what that means, right? Is that he made the chances, but other people didn't finish them as well. So if we improve our finishing, he might get to 3.
Yeah, so. it's always a bit more than you think. It doesn't sound like a huge amount in all competitions over a season, but it actually is. I think. Do you know what though? It's so much depends on like Bukayo Saka again. There's so many. I know it's not that deep. I'm just going to say disagree. I'm overthinking this.
Okay,
but I would like to see him. I think he can, but again, it's the whole like just because he can or it could happen doesn't mean it will happen. So I'm going to say disagree, but ever so slightly disagree. I would probably be bang in the middle on that.
Okay, but you're not allowed to do that, so you have to disagree. So that's fine. Those are the rules. I don't make the rules. I don't make the rules. Actually, I do make the rules.
You literally made the rules.
I literally made the rules up. So there I go. I'm enforcing the rules. Seaweed Otter.
Yeah.
We are going to regret getting rid of Leandro Trossard.
I'm going to say disagree. I think it was time. I think I mean, my preference would have probably been maybe to see him stay as the second or third option, but he doesn't want to do that. So I think if you have a player who's not playing the role that they want to play, I think that's a bigger regret because you're not getting the best out of that player. I think it was probably, it's a new challenge for him in his career. I think he wanted to go. He's obviously going to get like a pretty hefty salary, I think, as well, by all accounts. So, yeah, no, I think they'll be okay. I don't think we will regret it. I think we'll miss him, but I don't think we will regret.
Yeah, I think what will happen is, at some point in the season, somebody will say, we'll have a game or two, and someone will go, only we had Trossard. Yeah. Trossard would have scored that chance. But I'm with you. I think if a player of 31 years of age is being offered a 3-year deal with big money, final move of his career, perhaps, at a point in his life where a fresh start is not the worst thing in the world for him on a personal level as well as a footballing level. I think you have to be open to that. We'll wait and see what Christos Solis can do in that sense. He's a guy who is coming in. I think he's going to be announced today, Thursday. So we'll wait and see. I don't necessarily have a statement about him, but is that the kind of signing that intrigues you a little bit more? The sort of 40 million is not the 80 million, that it is just 40 million because it's come from abroad and because it's come from, in inverted commas, a sort of lower tier league. Does that interest you more as a sort of fan and as a fan of football, not just Arsenal, but a fan of football? I kind of find those signings just a bit more interesting than oh, Bruno Guimaraes or Morgan Rogers, not to downplay their ability as players, but I think when you sort of, when it's a known quantity in the way that those guys are, there's something slightly missing about what a transfer promises. I mean, I had it loads of times with Arsene Wenger where you're signing a player and you go, who the hell is that? Mm-hmm. How good could this guy be? And a lot of the time it was not very good, actually. But there was something exciting about those kinds of deals. So I'm just quickly, your thoughts on Solace.
I think it's a really interesting one because I'm really interested in players who maybe they kind of have quite an interesting journey, and then all of a sudden they land at a club that's maybe he's played in Champions League, right? So it's not like a new thing, but maybe comes to the Premier League or goes to a top 4 club in a top 5 league, and you're like, oh wow, like this guy, why did no one else pick up on this guy? If you look at someone like Mikel Arteta, right, and I'm not for 1 second saying I'm expecting him to be that, but you look at the pathway that he had or the pathway that Eberechi Eze had, like recently, two very kind of like players who played together, and sometimes it's just putting them in different environments really unlocks another aspect to their play.
Sure.
And some players just continue to improve as the environments around them improve. Mm-hmm. I think Christian Mosquera, we mentioned him before, but out of all of the signings that Arsenal made last season, he was the one who probably, if you were going to say where your base expectation was at the beginning of the season compared to what your evaluation of that player at the end of the season was, he would probably have been the player who had the biggest gap in between those two.
Sure.
And you're always hoping that someone like Solis will be that kind of player, right? I think if you get someone in who's 29 and costs 60, 70, 80 million quid, it's a different kind of pressure straight away. And I think if there is an aspect of what Arsenal might try and do this season is just to try and minimise any pressure that's going into that dressing room this season, unless it's someone who has just dealt with it forever, unless you're going to go and sign like Mbappe, right? Like, I think you've got to be quite careful with the player profile that you put in there as well because of dressing room dynamic. I think he's kind of it feels like the perfect kind of like in that perfect ballpark. So yeah, I'm very intrigued. And again, it kind of feels like quite a low risk signing relative to some of the other numbers that have been talked about. Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I've watched a few videos and we've done our preview podcast, for our Patreon members, which will be out as and when he signs, and had a look at what he does and how he does it. I think there's certainly raw ingredients there that we should be excited about. Whether they translate or not, we'll have to wait and see. But the point has been made very well by many people that players have come from the Belgian league and done very well in England, not least Leandro Trossard. So, we'll wait and see what happens there. A couple to get us out. This one may be a bit heavy, but it came up quite a few times. John Rokesmith. Arsene Wenger is choosing to ignore Gianni Infantino's conduct, and it's becoming a stain on his legacy.
Agree. Yeah, agree. I think for someone who spoke so elegantly, I think it's the word, about so much stuff when people couldn't really do that or seem to not do that. I remember him talking about something when Bowie died. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, and it was the things that he was pulling out. Like, he gave my generation what he gave my generation after the war. Like, we were coming out of the war and all of this stuff.
Sure,
and I think that I think that, people change as they get older, and I think people obviously change sometimes in the environments that they're in. And when you're in those kind of boardrooms, you're around a lot of people who, I would go in there and they'd be like, who the fuck is this woke knob? Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I think
the disconnect
that about you all the time,
Exactly. Yeah. The disconnect is bigger, right? But yeah, I think it is like, I think it's just really disappointed, right? Because I feel like it's not even it's it's not like he's doing it at UEFA with Seferin, right? He's doing it at FIFA with Infantino, and this is someone who has actively and proactively shifted FIFA into a direction that it's never been before, and shifted the World Cup and done, in my opinion, arguably more damage to the sport than any single other individual ever. And I think it's just really disappointing seeing someone who is so beloved and was so great on so much other stuff be that close to it. But then again, you know, kind of the other side of that is like how much is that stuff kind of discussed or seen as weird as we see it within those circles, you know?
I think that's
not a massively articulate way of putting that.
No, I know what you mean, though. I mean, I would strongly agree with that statement, because I think when it boils right down to it, Arsene Wenger, the manager that we all loved and admired, and people didn't love him for as long as others, you know, they fell out of love with him, and that happens over the course of a relationship like that in a football club for as long as he was at Arsenal. But I think, you know, in that, you know, what made him so beloved among Arsenal fans wasn't just the fact that he made brilliant teams and won things. It was that he felt like he represented the club in the right way.
Yeah.
And that when it came to issues around the game, and not just issues around the game, but certainly societal issues as well, that when he was asked about those things, he always seemed to be on the right side. You know, think about the replaying the game against Sheffield United. You know, that kind of thing, that was something he was willing to do because it protected the integrity of the game. I feel like Arsene Wenger, the manager who sat there in press conference after press conference and spoke so well about the game of football and the responsibility he felt to the game of football and to fans and to players, would have been vehemently opposed to a lot of the stuff that we've seen implemented by Gianni Infantino and FIFA. And
I agree.
To be there alongside him feels like sort of tacit acceptance or complicity in that regard, you know. So that's where it gets sort of disappointing for me. I take your point that, you know, people change as they get older, but yeah, I mean,
we've seen that, like, even for example, I know it's a completely different thing, and I don't want to like equate it to being the same thing, but you know, you look at someone like I, for example, wouldn't have ever expected Jurgen Klopp to go and step into that role that he did at Red Bull, really.
Yeah,
I mean, but then that's my point, where I think that the only reason I'm saying that is not for, just to clarify, is just to not for any 1 second say like giving Arsene Wenger an excuse for that. I think that what I've realized a couple of times, like, you know, just whenever I've got like close to those kind of environments in football, you actually just realize how like it's quite jarring how different it actually is compared to your normal environment.
It is a different world.
It's so weird. It's like, and to the point where like, you've like, there are points where I've been in some of those places where I've genuinely felt like I've been like, oh my God, like, am I actually, am I like really weird for thinking, like, you know, for being like how we are, like the stuff that we talk about, or the kind of outlook that we have. And you realize that sometimes it feels a bit like a vacuum in there where, you know, it's hard to explain, like, without kind of like sitting with it for a little bit and then trying to properly explain it. But it is, I can't like overstate like how stark the difference is. And so therefore I'm just like, if you are around those all the time, like, I don't think I agree with it, but what I'm saying is I can see the path that happens. You know what I mean? I would like to think that more people didn't do that, but I think that football, especially the very, very top level of football, just exists in its own world. Yes. And I think this is just another case of that. And it's disappointing for sure. And it would be, you know, it's not impossible to see players speak out or people or executives to speak out about it. And I think that, you know, I just wish there was a bit more scrutiny on the whole around it. And it doesn't have to be, you know, Borja Iglesias or Hector Bellerin levels or Jackson Irvine levels, you know, in the men's game, for example. Like, I think just some executive level, more just base level criticism, I think, of things like FIFA and stuff like that would be great. And yeah.
We had lots about Mikel Arteta and contracts and things like that, but I don't have any strong information on that at this point. But I just thought this was an interesting one, and we'll use this one to get us out of here. Zooby Dooby Doo says, the Spanish men's national team's style of play through the World Cup is Mikel Arteta's ideal for Arsenal.
I'm going to say disagree. I think there are elements of it that are really, really good. I think Mikel Arteta would like to be a bit... Well, actually, do you know what, though? I think that also Spain won the World Cup with some limitations. Lamine Yamal was never fully fit through the tournament, I don't think. Nico Williams wasn't fully fit. It's different to the side that won the Euros because of that. But then again, I think a lot more managers would want to be a little bit more exciting attacking-wise. But you need the games to open up, right? When the games did open up for Spain, they scored more goals. And I think the same will happen with Arsenal. I think disagree because I think there are elements to it, but I also think Mikel Arteta just likes I think as a club manager, you have more games, you're allowed to sign people, right? You are able to develop a different dynamic in a football team as well. So therefore, I think that if Mikel Arteta was an international manager, 100% strongly agree. I think that it's just different at club level because you can build out a team with, I think, more different elements to its identity because you have the scope, the resources, and the time to do so. So yeah, I think parts of it, for sure, but with other elements that just happen when you are a league winner and a Champions League finalist.
Yeah, the conceding just one goal in the tournament, yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's him all over. I think that is going to be the challenge because I think the perception of the football Mikel Arteta wants is very strongly tied to what we did last season. I don't know, and I've said this before, I think it is a little bit... there's some arch pragmatism went on, not just last season, the season before as well, when we had all the injuries and we finished second with all those injuries, and he sort of held that up as like what we did was incredible because of all the players that we had missing. And I think in hindsight, it never feels incredible to finish second and be out of a title race, but you can sort of see the point. But those two seasons, for various reasons, now become very aligned with the football that people think Mikel Arteta wants. My belief, it always has been, that he wants to be a bit more expansive and score more goals and be a bit more attacking because it just makes sense. Yeah. You know, that you're not giving yourself fucking heart attacks every week. So we'll wait and see what they do in the transfer market. I'm going to get you out of here, but... this podcast going out on Thursday. Tonight, Stadio are having a little bit of a gig in the South Bank Centre in London, and tickets still available if people want to come along.
Still a few left, if you want to go and get them last minute. So we're doing a few shows like kind of every 6 months or so at the South Bank Centre in London, and Moose and I have got Nish Kumar tonight joining us. So if you're in London and you want to come along, there's still a few tickets left on the South Bank Centre website. You just search for Stadio Live. And doors I think are at 7:15. Show probably starts about 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Okay, very good.
If you want to come down. We probably need a few more Arsenal fans in there as well. So because Musa is a Manchester United fan. Nish is a Manchester United fan.
Oh, you're outnumbered already. Okay. Yeah. So you need the moral support. So if you're at a loose end this evening, you want to go along for a good evening of football chat, that's where you go. South Bank Centre website has the tickets. Ryan, thanks, pleasure as always. Thank you very much.
Great to see you, mate. Take care.
Thank you very much indeed to Ryan. You can find him on Blue Sky. He is at ryanhun.bsky.social, at ryanhun.bsky.social, and of course, co-host of the Stadio podcast, which you can get in all the usual podcasty places. So that is just about that for this week's show. Just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, for downloading, for subscribing, for listening, for sharing, and all of the stuff that you do. It's midsummer. There's not a great deal going on. Hopefully those wheels start turning pretty soon, and who knows what will happen between now and the the next Arsecast Extra. When we talk to James, it'll probably be on Monday. So for now, folks, thanks very much as always. Have yourselves a great weekend, and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.